make me back to dear old Blighty, put me on the table and the towel.
On June 16th, 1986, an album was released that didn't just capture a moment, it defined an era. 40 years later, The Queen is Dead still looms large over indie rock. Its bold wit, devastating beauty, and jagged heart still as fresh as ever. Join me for a deep dive into the Smiths' masterpiece as we celebrate the 40th anniversary of The Queen is Dead. I'm Arnaldo, and welcome to The Sun Shines Out of Our Behinds. The Queen is Dead was the third studio album by the Smiths. It was recorded mostly during the winter of 1985. It entered the UK charts, or at least peaked at the UK charts at number 2, and was also certified gold in the United States. Eventually, it became probably one of the most iconic albums of the 80s. Johnny Marr has since revealed how intense the creative process was. In his autobiography, he recalls knowing that the third album had to be something special and that greatness could only be achieved if the band dug deeper than ever. The title originally was not The Queen is Dead. It was supposed to be Margaret on the Guillotine, which was a direct jab at the Prime Minister at the time, Margaret Thatcher. But eventually they settled on a quote, a phrase from a book by Hubert Selby Jr. called Last Exit to Brooklyn. Jeff Travis, label head of Rough Trade, had suggested that George Martin produce the album. Unfortunately, George Martin had no interest in producing an indie band, and Morrissey and Marr tossed around the idea of maybe having Tony Visconti, David Bowie's producer, produce the album. That also did not materialize. And at that point, Johnny Marr and Morrissey decided to produce the album themselves and call in the engineer that helmed the recording sessions of the previous album, that is Stephen Street, to also sit behind the mixing desk. The album was recorded at a farmhouse studio in Surrey called Jacob Studio. And this was because the band had moved back to the Manchester area from London to escape the pressure of the media and also to escape the control, a little bit of the control from Rough Trade and Jeff Travis. During this time, also, the band had a new attorney, and they were ill-advised that possibly because of the release of Hatful of Hollow, which was that album between the first album and Meat is Murder, could be considered almost a fulfillment of a full album, even though it really was a collection of B-sides, outtakes, and BBC sessions, and informed them that probably The Queen is Dead was the last album owed in their contract. Hence, they started shopping around and came to an agreement with EMI that they would release through EMI after the release of The Queen is Dead. This obviously angered Jeff Travis at Rough Trade, and he put an injunction on the on the next album, which was The Queen is Dead, which delayed the release from the originally scheduled February of 1986 all the way until the matters got resolved to June of 1986. The Boy with the Thorn in His Side was the first track recorded in August of 1985. It was rush released as a single, almost in a, let's call it a finished demo version, because Jeff Travis felt very strongly about the track, wanted to release it as a single, almost a stopgap single in between albums, which the Smiths were very used to. So at that point, it wasn't intended to be included into the album until subsequently, later during the recording process, they realized that probably the inclusion of a light and breezy track like The Boy with a Thorn in His Side would be the right relief from all of the dark tones and the seriousness of the album. And at that stage, Johnny Marr remixed the track slightly, adding also some little bits of orchestration through his new favorite tool or instrument, the emulator. Little trivia: the marimba that is included on the track is inspired by that same use that the Rolling Stones did on their track Under My Thumb. Morrissey cited this track, The Boy with the Thorn in His Side, along with Now My Heart is Full, one of his later solo songs, as his two favorite songs. Bigmouth Strikes Again, released in May of 1986, was the trailer single to the album, also inspired by another Rolling Stones track, Jumping Jack Flash, and it sees Morrissey as the Joan of Arc of the music industry, who is being punished and burned at the stake for his outspokenness. So now that we talked about the two lead-in singles to the album, let's talk about the proper album tracks, starting with the first track, the title track, The Queen is Dead, probably one of the most musically ferocious Smiths songs. Johnny Marr recalls that he wanted the band to not be perceived solely as a jangly indie band, therefore decided to compose and arrange and perform such a strong, hard, probably one of the most ferocious tracks musically in the Smiths catalog. Two interesting things about the intro to The Queen is Dead. Obviously, the excerpt from the movie The L-Shaped Room, where Cicely Courtnidge sings Take Me Back to Dear Old Blighty, which is also connected to the lyrical theme of England and monarchy afterwards in Morrissey's lyrics. But the intro drum sound, which is a quite complicated pattern to continue playing throughout the rest of the song, and Mike Joyce, the drummer, expressed his frustration on how it was best to incorporate and blend in that intro tom, very, very quick drum pattern, with the rest of the drum playing of the track. And Stephen Street, the engineer, just took a very pragmatic approach in saying, we can just loop it and you can figure out how to play it once you're going on tour, you can figure out how to play it live. The inspiration for Johnny Marr came from the music of the Velvet Underground. He mentioned how he was constantly listening to a new compilation of unreleased material by the Velvet Underground that came out around that time. And the song that stood out to him and was kind of the inspiration for The Queen is Dead is the track I Can't Stand It. And lyrically, Morrissey is at his finest. Johnny Marr later revealed that probably the lyrics to The Queen is Dead is probably one of his favorite lyrics that Morrissey wrote during the Smiths. A witty take on the state of the nation, encompassing cultural, social, political aspects, and the reality of the time of the monarchy in the UK at this time. Next, the witty tirade against Jeff Travis, label head of Rough Trade, and that is on the song Frankly Mr. Shankly, which probably not one of Johnny Marr's favorites. It's in that vaudeville style that was not one of Johnny Marr's favorites, but he thought that the lyrics were brilliant and that it should be included in the album. What follows is probably One of the most epic moments of the entire album, one of the most dramatic moments, and that is probably one of the finest ballads that the Smiths ever recorded, along with Last Night I Dreamt That Somebody Loved Me, but that's not until the following year on Strange Ways. I'm talking about the ballad I Know It's Over. Epic beauty, intimate and honest confessions about depression, but also a lot of hopefulness. It's a waltz tempo and it has melody changes with almost every verse. That's what I think is so brilliant. Another brilliant stroke is the opening line is exactly the same as the closing line, and the closing is just as epic as anything Morrissey could do. Probably, in my opinion, one of his finest vocal performances in all the entire Smiths catalog, repeating the opening line again and again at the end as the track fades out, in with different types of inflections, different types of melody lines. It's just, for me, just epic beauty. And then comes the song that probably sums up the entire atmosphere of the album. Very dark. It's called Never Had No One, inspired musically by a Stooges track, I Need Somebody. And the final lyrics of the track also mirror the theme that are in that very same song. In addition, there was a two-part vocal harmony that Morrissey did in for the vocal take, and eventually Morrissey and Marr decided to erase that track, only to then years later admit that probably it should have been left in and probably would have added to the beauty of the song. Closing the first side is Cemetery Gates. Misspelled. I honestly don't know. I don't have any reason as to why Morrissey used that very same spelling. And beautiful, beautiful. Some people think that that is probably the finest guitar work or finest riff by Johnny Marr. It's breezy, light, just like The Boy with the Thorn in His Side, and is the perfect segue from, in the sequence of the album after those two very serious and dark tracks, I Know It's Over and Never Had No One. And the theme of Cemetery Gates is Morrissey kind of making fun of himself and getting back at the critics that were always very, very quick to always pick out and point out all of the sources of inspiration of many Morrissey songs that I've talked about in the past. Morrissey has often been inspired and lifted phrases and quotes from a lot of novels, a lot of writers, film, and so forth. And Cemetery Gates is basically him saying, okay, this is from Wilde, this is from Keats, this is from Yeats, and there you have it. Side 2 opens with the two singles that preceded the album, and the first one being actually the second one, Bigmouth Strikes Again, perfect opener of side 2, followed by the breezy and light The Boy with a Thorn in His Side in a slightly altered remixed version, as I mentioned earlier. And then we have probably one of the most humorous tracks of the album, at least in terms of lyrically humorous, the style of rockabilly that Johnny Marr explored previously on a few other tracks by the Smiths, this time giving it almost a jangly country finger-picking twist to his rockabilly. And the lyrics are basically poking fun at religion, at the church, but also at the same time championing the freedom of expression through the figure of a vicar who possibly is a cross-dresser dressed in a tutu. Next up is probably what has become later on the national anthem to Smithdom, the probably most iconic track along with How Soon Is Now by the Smiths, and I'm talking about There Is a Light That Never Goes Out. Its morbidity is coupled with the celebration of hopeless love, dying in a car crash hitting a double-decker bus. Can you get any more poetic than that? It's such a strong track that Jeff Travis, label head of Rough Trade, wanted this track to be the leading single to be released right before the album. Johnny Marr objected, strenuously objected, and got his way and had Bigmouth Strikes Again released instead. And to this day, both Morrissey and Johnny Marr love this track, and they continue it almost every show. They each play it live. Musical inspiration for Johnny Marr, you can probably notice it, the opening guitar strums, that break of guitars, acoustic guitars, is taken almost from There She Goes Again by the Velvet Underground. Eventually, it was released as a single in 1992 posthumously by Rough Trade to promote a new collection that was, I think it was called The Greatest Hits. And the final track, probably one of the most unusual tracks to end the album with, especially because it has this very weird fade in, fade out, and fade in again intro, almost as if someone is opening and closing the door to a room or a hall where music is being played. And that is Some Girls Are Bigger Than Others. And curious to note that Some Girls also had a third verse, which was not included in the studio version, but was included in live performances of the song. And now let's talk about this intriguing and also iconic artwork, which you see behind me. The album cover is, as usual, crafted. The idea, everything, the layout by Morrissey himself, as all of the Smiths' artwork. This time, the actor in question is a very, very popular, very famous, iconic French actor, Alain Delon, and the still that was captured for the photograph of the album cover is taken from the movie, I think from 1964, called The Unvanquished. That's the title in English, or at least in the United States. And forgive me if I butcher the original title of the movie in French is L'Insoumise. Alain Delon was very happy to lend permission to use his image for the album artwork, although later Morrissey confessed in his autobiography, Alain Delon told him that his parents expressed much displeasure that his image, Alain Delon's image, was used on the album cover with such a distasteful album title. The image of Alain Delon is also featured on the interior inner sleeve, another scene taken from the very same movie, another still, another frame of Alain Delon. And let's talk about the inside, the inner. The album's a gatefold, I think, apart from Hatful of Hollow. The third studio album by the Smiths, The Queen is Dead, has a gatefold with lyrics. And the famous picture that you see behind me of the group, picture that was taken by Stephen Wright on a cold Manchester, probably not too cold, but somewhat cold, depending on just looking at the attire that the group was sporting in Manchester, in front of the Salford Lads Club. It's kind of like a youth club, I believe, and photo shoot that only took about 20 minutes. And Johnny Marr, interestingly, pointed out in his autobiography that when he was given a sample of the photographs and the contact sheets on which pictures he would poses he would prefer would be used on the inner gatefold. This one you see here is the one that he explicitly crossed out, probably because you only have a glimpse of him, kind of like sneaking out from behind of Morrissey. Whether or not there's any bad blood, maybe, maybe not, for Morrissey picking exactly the picture that Johnny Marr rejected, we'll never know. In 2017, Warner, or Sire, in a celebration of the 30th anniversary of The Queen is Dead, but 1 year later, they released a box set of The Queen is Dead, featuring not only the original album, but also a double live album and a double album that featured alternate versions, demo versions, the long extended version, which I highly recommend, of the track The Queen is Dead, as well as the B-sides. As you see here, the artwork still from the same movie with Alain Delon, but in a different pose. And actually, I have to say that probably this is, let's call it the unaltered pose of that frame, the scene when Alain Delon dies at the end of the movie. Because the one that you see here, I have a feeling that the placement of that hand was actually added. I think that was slightly altered because I watched the movie and I tried to capture that exact frame, and it's quite impossible. Don't know if it was done from a different angle, but that additional hand that you see right above my thumb shouldn't be there. I think this is the natural pose that comes from the actual frame of the movie. And lastly, as customary on my other deep dive videos of the Smiths, I like to always mention the messages that are in the runout, that are etched in the runout grooves of the records, which you see here on side A, Fear of Manchester, and on side B, the quote from a movie from 1960, Saturday Night and Sunday Morning, and that etching is "Them Was Rotten Days." Delayed, disputed, defiant, The Queen is Dead remains the Smiths' crowning achievement, in my opinion, and also in the opinion of many, many, many fans. 40 years later, it still speaks to outsiders, romantics, and the newer generations that still can find beauty in this amazing album. Let me know what your thoughts are about The Queen is Dead. Let me know what your favorite tracks are. I'd love to hear them. Feel free to share the video, like, subscribe, and take a look at also the other videos on my channel, not only in the miniseries The Sun Shines Out of Our Behinds, which is dedicated and focused on the music of the Smiths. Thank you so much for celebrating with me the 40th anniversary of The Queen is Dead.
Take me anywhere.